This here is the loop fly. Now the fly gets its name from the series of loops which are tied onto the hook and then cut and finally combed out. Now it's a great attractor pattern which was designed to be a flashy attractor pattern for low light conditions, moving water, surf conditions, or any time that an attractor pattern would be an appropriate choice for a fly. It's a quick tie, it's an easy tie, it's a fun tie, but best of all, it only uses one material. And that material is Bill's Bodi-Braid. One of the nice things about tying this fly is that you don't need a lot of materials and you don't need a lot of tools. All you really need is a jar of Softex, a package of Bill's Bodi-Braid, a common comb, a bodkin, a pair of scissors, and your bobbin with a spool of monofilament thread. Let's take a moment and discuss how this fly is actually constructed. As you can see in the illustration, it's constructed by tying in a series of loops. Now in the tail area, which I refer to as the hand, I generally will tie in 5 loops. A short loop, a medium loop, a long loop, a medium loop, and then I'll top it off with another short loop. I'll secure those at the hook bend, where I'll begin to tie a series of 3 loops, which I refer to as the propeller, and then I'll move my thread forward and do another propeller, and then I'll finish it off generally with doing 4 loops in the front to give it a nice collar. Now you can adjust the density or the sparseness of this fly just by adjusting the number of loops or number of propellers that you put along the hook shank. The fewer propellers, the sparser the fly. The more propellers, the denser the fly. So I suggest that you play around and become familiar with how the fly is tied and different densities, because you'll never be fishing in the same water. It'll be cloudier one day, it'll be clear the next day. One day you'll be fishing in water with a lot of movement. Then you might be fishing in slower moving water. So having different densities in your box is always a good idea. Okay, so let's tie a loop fly. I'm going to begin by attaching the Bodi-Braid to the hook shank, and I'm going to bring my thread right back to the hook bend and stop right there. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in 1 short loop, then a medium loop, and I'm just going to stack these on top of each other, catching each loop with a couple thread wraps just so that it doesn't unravel. There's a long loop, now another medium loop, and you'll see that it's going to take the shape of what I refer to as the hand. So the 5 loops are roughly shaped like your hand. Now at this point, I'm going to come backwards and really crank down on the material, secure it in place, and you'll see that the Bodi-Braid is actually like another thread, so you have to constantly move it out of the way, but you'll get used to it. We are all secured down, and at this point we're going to start making our propellers, which is a series of 3 loops, one on the top, one on the near side, and one on the far side of the shank. So here is our first loop. Again, catching with just a couple thread wraps. Here's one on the far side of the shank, and one on the near side of the shank. It doesn't matter which order you do them. Generally, whichever side I finish on is the side that I begin on. Alright, so I'll secure those down and move my thread forward a bit. And stop about a quarter of the way up the shank and start with another series of loops or another propeller. Near side, top, far side. Okay, now you can get a decent look at the different loops and how it's constructed. Okay, so at this point we're going to bring our thread forward some more. And do another propeller. The near side, the top of the fly, and then the far side. Secure this all down. And up front, I'm going to put 4 loops. Looks like I'm going to run out of material, so at this point I will just take this and fold it back and incorporate it right into the fly, secure it down, and just grab another length of material. And don't worry, because you're not going to waste material. If you do this fly properly, you'll never waste material because you'll always save your offcuts and reuse them on another fly. So it's a very efficient way of using the materials with almost next to zero waste. Alright, and so now I've got 4 loops up front. And I'll trim this and get that out of there. Alright, so we'll secure this down and then come in and do our whip finish. Tie it down. Okay, so now we're going to come in and we're going to cut all of the loops. And as you can see, I'm going to cut them off center and also on an angle. The idea is to cut the loops off center, and that'll give you a short strand and a long strand, and that will establish the taper, bringing the material further back into the tail region and tapering the entire fly. I'm going to come in, I'm going to cut this at an angle. Okay. And I'm going to continue cutting them. Now we're going to get our comb, and we're going to come in and start at the tips and start to bust all of the braids. Break them all up. Okay. Now that we've combed out all of the braids, we're going to get our scissors and come in and trim this to a bait fish shape. And we're looking for all of those crazy fibers that stick out at weird angles, as well as trying to shape it appropriately. I like to take it out of the vise and come in from the tail and trim forward. And this will help us to get a nice bait fish shape. And that's looking pretty good right there. So the last thing left to do is get our jar of Softex And we're just going to get a couple drops onto our bodkin, and we're going to work it into the tail area right behind the hook bend. And what this is going to do is stiffen up the fly just enough in that area to help prevent fouling during the cast. And while I'm at it, we'll put a couple drops right on the thread wraps. And that should do it. And there you have it, the loop fly.